Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from the Washington Free Beacon. This is dated, June 19th. And I thought this would be pretty relevant to things going on to mention. So it says, the Washington Post foreign desk accused of pro-Hamas bias teams with Al Jazeera veterans. So if we're wondering why the Washington Post's coverage of the Israel-Palestine conflict is completely skewed in one direction, that is to be completely anti-Israel, well, I think we know why. So it says 6 members of the Washington Post foreign desk previously wrote for Al Jazeera. So that's going to mean you have some pretty biased reporting here. It says the Washington Post is in turmoil. Old editor out, new editor in, and a new publisher under siege from a hostile and beleaguered staff. Yeah, if you don't know about what's going on at the Washington Post right now, go check it out. It's especially if you don't like the media, it's a pretty good thing. You probably should want to go ahead and check it out. So one of the criticisms the paper has weathered as it has bled money and subscribers is that since Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack on Israel, its coverage of the war in the Middle East has been shoddy, inaccurate, and implacably hostile to Israel. Days after the Israel Defense Forces rescued 4 hostages from a Palestinian refugee camp, for example, the Post headline blared, more than 200 Palestinians killed in Israeli hostage raid in Gaza. Sounds a little biased there to me. Let's keep going. It says the report, the work of 11 Post staffers, went on to describe one of the bloodiest raids in the war as a brazen operation that left unimaginable devastation in its wake, of which none of that's really true, but okay. It says residential blocks were destroyed, tanks menaced the streets, and grievously wounded Palestinians, some without limbs, writhed in pain on the dusty roads of the camp's central market, according to videos and images of the raid, the report stated. The first quote in the story comes from a Hamas spokesman, there's your problem right there, who accused Israel of committing a massacre. An Israeli official is quoted in the 7th paragraph, which means they purposely buried that. So what the piece did not mention is that the hostages were held by prominent Gazan civilians in crowded apartment buildings, and that Hamas fighters opened fire on the hostages and Israeli soldiers during the operation, making civilian casualties virtually inevitable. And it's a pretty densely packed area too, from what I know. So I mean, unfortunately, stuff like that is going to happen. Don't like it, but that's unfortunately the reality of war. And again, if you wanted to avoid all this, maybe don't kidnap citizens of another country and then hold them hostage. But that's just me. This hostility to Israel has been a thread throughout the paper's reporting, but there's another pattern among reporters on the Post foreign desk. At least 6 members of the Post foreign desk previously wrote for Al Jazeera, the Doha-based news outlet bankrolled in part by the government of Qatar, which is now sheltering Hamas's top leaders, a Washington Free Beacon review found. They include the paper's Middle East editor, Jesse Hage? I'll just call it that, says who spent more than a decade as an editor at the outlet's English edition, London correspondent Louisa Lovelock, investigative reporter Evan Hill, visual enterprise editor Reem Akkad, Washington Post Live host Libby Casey, and breaking news reporter Adela Suleiman. The Al Jazeera Washington Post pipeline raises ethical questions for an American newspaper that prides itself as a bulwark against threats to democracy. Founded in 1996, Al Jazeera has been described by an Israeli court as an intelligence and propaganda arm for Hamas, and the outlet is banned from broadcasting in Israel, where officials alleged in February that Al Jazeera journalist, in scare quotes, Mohammed Wishaw, served as a commander in Hamas's guided missile units. In the United States, the Justice Department ordered the network's English-language affiliate to register as a foreign agent of Qatar in 2020, though it has refused to do so. Of course, because why would they do anything we say? The Post declined to comment, of course, because this is massive egg on their face. Over the decades, Al Jazeera has published a number of false reports, including a 2013 story charging that Israel opened dams in order to cause flooding in Gaza, a claim it retracted 2 years later, and a 2014 report that cast doubt on the authenticity of videos depicting ISIS's beheadings of American journalists. A 2017 Al Jazeera report described the Israeli city of Haifa's location in northern occupied Palestine. Al Jazeera remains a propaganda outlet that is often pro-Hamas, and in the past it has been pro-Saddam Hussein, pro-insurgency, and pro-Al-Qaeda. Foundation for Defense of Democracy Vice President of Research Jonathan Shanzer said, okay, so there's their problem, is that, let's go ahead and be pro all the worst things on the planet. No wonder you guys are getting the scrutiny that you're getting. Because I think that when we look at the media landscape in the United States right now and the concerns that we have about the disinformation space, Al Jazeera features prominently. The outlet falsely alleged in March that IDF soldiers did that word there that I'm not going to repeat for YouTube, says it did that to patients and staff at a Gaza hospital. The piece was quietly removed a day later, according to the Jerusalem Post. Because why be honest and say, yeah, we're full of crap. It says the Washington Post's coverage of the Israeli hostage rescue earlier this month is not the first time the paper has drawn criticism for emphasizing Hamas's version of events at the expense of the facts. Just over a month after the October 7th terrorist attacks, the Post ran is that an A1? It looks like it says A1, but maybe it's supposed to be AI? I don't know. It says an A1. Does for anybody out there that knows journalism lingo, is A1 a journalism thing? I don't know what that means. But anyway, let's just keep going. It says, ran a A1 or AI story entitled, Israel's War with Hamas Separates Palestinian Babies from Their Mothers. The story was rife with inaccuracies and misrepresentations, including a false allegation that Palestinian mothers who were allowed to leave Gaza to give birth had to return to Gaza. Nor did the reporters reach out to anybody in the Israeli government for comment, a basic journalistic practice. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Executive Director Robert Satloff picked it apart, writing that the report was a one-sided editorialization of news. A subsequent 230-word editor's note attached to the piece said its reporters fell short of the Post standards for fairness. Well, I think like practically every article the Post writes these days seems to fall short of the standards for fairness at the Washington Post. So yeah, that's not really like a, oh God, we screwed up. It's kind of like, yeah, it just wasn't what we wanted. Nothing is, because you guys suck. Because Lovelux is the lead byline on that report. Aside from her work with Al Jazeera, she previously worked as the Post's Baghdad bureau chief. Lovelock's work with Al Jazeera is omitted from her biography on the Post website. Yeah, that's kind of lying by omission, I guess. So Al Jazeera is nothing more than a Qatar project to exert influence and propaganda, said Alberto Fernandez, vice president of the Middle East Media Research Institute. This is not a media empire meant to make money that uses the language of the progressive left to reach a Western audience. And scrolling up, thought that might have been the end of the article. So we'll scroll down a little too far. So finishing it off, it says, when the Post joined many other outlets in its pivot to video, it hired Libby Casey as a senior news anchor. She previously served as national TV correspondent for Al Jazeera America. So Al Jazeera is basically Muslim Brotherhood television, said Fernandez. It has been intimately involved with an Islamist struggle since the beginning, and that's the dominant ideology there. And I think, that is the end of the article. Yeah, so Washington Post, you got some splaining to do. Really bad Ricky Ricardo impersonation there. But, yeah, I mean, this is, I think if we did some digging in other places, not necessarily about the Israel-Palestine thing, but just about any topic you could think of with these newspapers, such as like the Post and the New York Times, for example, you find out that a lot of these people are basically, as I would say, like on the take, such as like, all these people being Al Jazeera veterans at the Washington Post. You'd probably find the same thing at the New York Times and so on and so forth. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I'd like to hear from you. Do you think this is fair at all to people that are just trying to, read a fair and level newspaper article? Or are you, are you totally okay with this? Well, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.